Have you ever felt just lost? Like you're swimming in this sea of moral gray areas, trying to figure out which way to go? That's exactly what we're going to tackle today. We're diving into Christian ethics, not as some stuffy old rulebook, but as a practical guide for navigating the messy, beautiful, and complicated journey of life.
All right, so let's just get real for a second. In a world that is anything but black and white, how do you actually know what the right thing to do is? I mean, it's the kind of thing that can keep you up at night, right? And honestly, sometimes the sheer number of choices can feel, well, completely paralyzing.
The truth is, life often feels like this giant, confusing maze of crisscrossing paths. One minute, you're looking at these huge societal issues on the news, and the very next, you're just trying to figure out how to handle a tough spot at work or with a friend. These moral puzzles, they just keep coming.
And this is where our main idea for today really comes into play. Instead of some rigid rulebook that tries to cover every possible scenario, which is impossible, the sources we're looking at today present Christian ethics as a compass. Think about it. When you're lost in the woods, a compass doesn't spell out every single step for you. But what it does do is give you a fixed point, a consistent direction, and that's absolutely crucial.
Okay, so if we're going to use this idea of a moral compass, we probably need to understand how it works, right? What's it all about? What's its real purpose? Let's take a closer look at what makes it tick.
So, at its heart, Christian ethics is really just, it's the study of the biblical principles and truths that are supposed to guide how we live and the choices we make. But here's the most important part. This is not some abstract, high-in-the-sky theological debate. No, this is a framework that's meant to be used, right down in the trenches of your everyday life. And this is where you start to see just how big the vision really is. We're talking about something way beyond a simple checklist of don'ts. The goal is so much bigger than that. It's about shaping a life that actually reflects the character of Christ and building communities that are just full of things like justice, compassion, and love. All right, we've got our compass. Fantastic. But a compass is pretty useless if you don't know what it's pointing to, right? So what is its true north? What's that one single fixed point that every moral decision should be aimed at?
And the source material couldn't be clearer on this. The ultimate true north for every single moral question is the character of God. Now think about that for a second. That's a total game changer. It means right and wrong aren't just some random list of arbitrary rules. They're grounded in the very nature of God himself, who is inherently good and just and loving.
Okay, so if God's character is our true north, that's our destination. Great, but how do we actually get there? What's the map we should be using to navigate all the tricky parts of life? Well, this is where we get into what are called ethical frameworks. First up, we've got something called deontology. Now that sounds complicated, but it's really just about duty. This is the part of our map that focuses on the rules of the road, so to speak. It asks a really straightforward question. What is the right thing to do? It's all about the what. Then, on the flip side of that map, you have virtue ethics. And this one takes a totally different angle. Instead of zooming in on a single action, it zooms out to focus on the person who's making the choice. The big question here isn't what should I do, but rather, what kind of person am I becoming? This is all about the who. So you see how these are kind of like two sides of the same coin, right? Deontology gives you the what, the specific actions, the rules, and virtue ethics gives you the who, the character behind the actions. And what the sources show is that in Christian ethics, you absolutely need both. Think about it. Rules without good character, that can just become cold, rigid legalism. But good character without any understanding of right and wrong actions, well, that can just be well-intentioned but totally off base. They need each other. Okay, now let's get super practical for a second. There's this amazing tool that kind of brings all of this together. It's called the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. It's named after John Wesley, and it's just a fantastic model for when you're facing those really tough decisions. It gives you 4 places to look for wisdom. You start with Scripture, that's number 1. Then you look at tradition, the wisdom of the church throughout history. After that, you use your own God-given reason to think it through. And finally, you bring in your own personal experience of God. Okay, that's enough theory for now. We've got our compass, we've got our map. Now it's time to actually get out there and walk the path. So how do we start putting this stuff into practice in, our actual real lives? But wait, before we do that, let's just bust a couple of common myths right now. First, This idea that Christian ethics is just a giant rulebook filled with don'ts. It's not. It's about shaping who you are. And second, the myth that this is all just outdated, irrelevant stuff. The reality, God's truth is timeless. It applies today just as much as it ever did.
So the big question is, where do you start? And the good news is, you don't have to flip your entire life upside down tomorrow. The sources point to some really simple, practical starting points. Maybe you just start by spending a few minutes each day with a passage like Micah 6:8. Or maybe join a small group at church to talk this stuff over. Or even simpler, just start asking yourself one question before you act. Is this going to glorify God and love my neighbor? That's it.
And if you really want to build this into a lasting habit, it really boils down to three things. First, reflect. You got to make that time for scripture and prayer, especially before big decisions. Second, build. Find those people who will hold you accountable and encourage you. And third, learn. Just never stop being a student. Keep digging into scripture and keep paying attention to what's happening in the world.
Okay, so we've covered the compass, the map, and how to walk the path. But where are we actually headed? What's the point of the whole journey? And why does any of this matter for anyone besides, just us?
And this is really the beautiful purpose of it all. The end goal isn't just to become some morally perfect individual living on an island. No, it's about being part of building something so much bigger than ourselves. It's about helping to create communities, families, even a world that reflects God's justice, compassion, and love. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. just nailed it when he said, "The time is always right to do what is right." What a powerful reminder, right? This whole thing isn't about waiting until you're a better person someday in the future. It's about the choices you and I make right now, today. So there you have it. The compass is set. The map is in your hands. The path is right there in front of you. The only question left is the one you have to answer for yourself. What is your next step?